Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donohue and Sonia Mansfield talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donohue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. It is a long weekend for us in North America for various reasons. Celebrating or not celebrating, you know, we're all in this together.
I always celebrate a long weekend.
That's what we're celebrating. That's what we're calling it. We are the podcast that talks about creeps from the past to the present. We're talking about a present day creep, a hip hop legend. But don't worry. At the end of the show, in case this is your first time, we always end with someone who's not a creep. And I have a few not a creeps to talk about at the end of this show. You can find us. We have on Facebook. We do have a basic Facebook page, but that's where people usually go to complain about our language. We've had to make this. People get annoyed when we have to say this, but we have to say this because if we don't, then we get annoyed. People send us annoying messages. We use salty language on this show because we are adults, and this is how we talk.
Yeah, fucking deal with it.
But if you want to interact with us and our fellow listeners, your fellow cohorts, the best place to go is our What a Creep podcast group Facebook page. You do have to ask to join the group. If somebody just tagged you and you're like, what the hell is this? You do have to answer those few questions. And just the rule is don't be a dick. We talk about pop culture. We talk about news. We talk about past creeps, future creep ideas. And we're always looking for ideas. That's why I'm talking all this shit at the top of the show. We always look for creeps and non-creeps. You could find us on Twitter at CreepPod because somebody had What a Creep on Twitter for over 10 years and never used it. Creep. We're on Instagram, What a Creep Podcast, and we have an old-timey email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. That's a great place to send us your comments and suggestions as well. Also, if you would like some stickers, we are happy to send those to you. Just leave us your address wherever you are on the face of the planet of the Earth. Is that the expression or just planet of the Earth? Anyway, whatever. It's been a wild day, you guys. We're just putting the show together for you.
Yes, we are.
What a Creep Podcast Group at gmail.com. And Sonia, do you want to tell them about our website?
Yes, go to whatacreeppodcast.com and it's everything you ever wanted to know about our podcast, but we're afraid to ask. We have links to all of our past episodes, and in each of those posts are show notes. You can also swipe left or right or up or down on your phone, and you could see all of our show notes. We source every single thing we do. We don't make this shit up, and we want to give people credit for the work they do. And if you're looking to dig a little deeper on our creep, click those links, read those articles. Mm-hmm. There's lots of stuff in there. We also have a link to our merch shop where you could get t-shirts and tote bags and face masks and all kinds of good stuff. So please do that. There's also going to be, I'm going to add it this weekend, a link to our Substack. So if you want to sign up for our Substack, that will be the place to do it. And there's a link to our Patreon page. You want to tell them about that, Margot?
Yes, Patreon. You look up What a Creep Podcast, and it's a way to help us support the show. This helps us with getting our news sources and the software and everything we use to keep the show going. We kind of MacGyver this all together with the help of all of you, and we really appreciate that. We have our first 8 seasons up on that wall. We put out 2 bonus episodes every month. Sometimes we do it in the last week, but we put them out there for y'all.
We got it in there, just under the wire.
Sometimes under the wire. And I just want to thank Lex Graham. That's the only name I saw. Kirsten, Marlene, and Julia for all signing up for Patreon since our last episode. And I'd like to thank Christine, who talked about us in Patreon. We talked about Monsters of Rock in our last bonus episode.
Yes.
And she said she saw it in Philadelphia and almost sweat to death out there. And girl, same at San Francisco. So I can only imagine what it was like in Philly. Alrighty. What else have I forgotten? Oh, if money is tight, you could feel free to help us out by just leaving us a review. iTunes, Spotify. I just heard Good Pods, by the way, they're always really good to us. I just heard, Sonia, this week, Stitcher is going to be phasing out their app.
I heard that too.
I'm sorry, in August. So I think they're going to use Pandora instead.
Oh, okay.
But there's lots of good apps out there. But sorry if y'all
Yeah.
get Stitcher. That's a bummer because I know people really liked that app.
I know. It's been around a while.
It has been, I think, since the beginning, really. It's one of
Yeah.
those. Yeah. Alrighty then. So, Sonia, are you ready to talk
Yeah.
about our creep today? We take turns, like I said. This is Sonia's turn this week.
Yes, I posted in our Facebook group and asked people for recommendations or referrals, requests, whatever you want to call it. I was like, send your creeps my way. And this one got mentioned and got a lot of upvotes. So again, we're interactive in that Facebook group.
Right.
So we are going to be talking about Russell Simmons. Sources for this episode, again, we source everything we do. The Atlantic, Biography, Complex, The Daily Beast, The Hollywood Reporter, Los Angeles Times, The New York Times, On the Record, which is a documentary on Max, PBS, People Magazine, Variety, and of course, our good friends at Wikipedia. Trigger warnings, y'all: sexual harassment, sexual assault, and rape. So if this isn't if you're sensitive, maybe this episode isn't for you. So, Russell Simmons helped create rap and hip hop culture as we know it. He took hip hop culture and honestly turned it into a business. He co-founded Def Jam, pioneered the rap rock crossover, Run DMC's Walk This Way, which they did with Aerosmith, and really just made rap fucking huge. He has co-produced a lot of your favorite hip hop and rap singles. He has worked with people from like Curtis Blow to LL Cool J, and he brought hip hop style to the fashion world and created what we now know is like a global audience for rap music. He made $300 million doing it.
Wow.
He's fucking rich. He's also a creep who has allegedly sexually assaulted 18 women that we know of. So let's start at the beginning. Russell Wendell Simmons was born in Hollis, Queens, in New York.
It's Christmas time in Hollis,
Queens. I knew you were going to say that.
Bob's cooking turkey, egg, collard greens. Keep going.
It's the best Christmas song.
Yeah.
October 4th, 1957. His father worked in public schools. He was an administrator there, and his mother worked for the Parks Department as a park administrator. He has two brothers. One is a painter, Daniel Simmons Jr., and his brother Joseph Simmons, probably better known as Run of Run DMC.
Reverend Run.
Reverend Run, that's right. Simmons has said that growing up in Queens was really rough, that it was really overrun by drugs back then. He said that everyone shot dope, that I used every drug there is. It didn't make him he says, it didn't make me a bad person. It made me a sad person. So he was like selling drugs, and he ran with a street gang known as the Seven Immortals. His dad was like, WTF, and made him get a job at an Orange Julius in Greenwich Village.
Village.
Greenwich, thank you. I always mispronounce it every time. Because his dad thought, if he's busy working, like he won't get into trouble, right? By the way, I love Orange Julius.
That was the best.
It is so good. We had one in my mall. He actually got fired after a month for throwing oranges at people.
Can't do that?
No, apparently you can't throw oranges at people. It's not a thing.
I've worked in fast food. I've wanted to throw oranges at people.
I get it.
I
get
respect.
it.
I can't cop him for that.
Yes. So a member of his gang from the Seven Immortals was murdered, and that was really like his wake-up call where he's like, oh shit, what am I doing? So he quit the gang and he started attending school at the City College of New York in Harlem. And he was only there for like a hot minute because while he was there, he met this young DJ named Kurt Walker, and he introduced him to something called hip hop, which was taking over New York. And if you haven't seen, there is a show on Netflix called The Get Down, which does a really good job of showing how it's a fictional show, but it's based in reality, obviously, and it shows how this grew up in New York. It's really good. Anyway, Kurt Walker, you might know by his other name, Curtis Blow.
Indeed.
So if you've never heard of The Breaks, please go listen to The Breaks because it's fucking dope. So one night in 1977, Simmons goes and sees MC Eddie Chiba rapping at a club, and he was just like, holy shit, like this is like the invention of the wheel. He freaks out and he starts his own management company called Rush Management, and he signs Curtis Blow. They put together, so Rapper's Delight comes out. This isn't their album. So, you know, hip hop,
yeah.
hip hop comes out, and that's a big hit. So they record a single called Christmas Rappin', and he couldn't get a deal. So he like pressed vinyl copies himself and like would take it to clubs and like have DJs play it, and that sparked interest. And that's when he started getting deals for people. So he started working with like Polygram, and Christmas Rappin' actually got like a release, like a real release, and it sold like 500,000 copies. Not bad. He dropped out of college, obviously, because he's like, I'm doing this now. In 1982, Russell Simmons' younger brother started Run DMC, and he produced 2 songs for them. It's Like That, and That's the Way It Is, and Sucker MCs. These songs are fucking dope, by the way. Like all these things are like my jam. And that's when he met Rick Rubin. He met him at this like Danceteria nightclub in Manhattan, and they immediately clicked. And Rubens was running a label out of his apartment called Def Jam, and Simmons joined him at Def Jam, and they were running it together out of like, actually, I said his apartment. It was his dorm room.
His college dorm. I was just going to say, yeah.
Yes. And then they had their first big hit together when they signed a 16-year-old LL Cool J. Whatever happened to him? And released a single called I Need a Beat, and it was a huge hit. They got a distribution deal from Columbia, and it was just like the first deal ever for like a hip hop independent label. And like, as they say, the rest is like hip hop history. So I'm not going to go through like every single thing Russell Simmons did, because he did a lot, but he brought us the Beastie Boys, for which I am forever grateful.
Yes.
They are like my all-time favorite. He got the first multi-million-dollar endorsement deal for a hip-hop group with Run DMC, and they did the song My Adidas.
Yes.
And so they got a huge deal. There was the whole thing with Run DMC and Aerosmith's Walk This Way, which became like the first like hip-hop, video to be played on MTV, and made Run DMC and rap huge. And they also signed Public Enemy, which
one of my favorites.
Yes, introduced the world to like Black
Flavor
Power.
Flav!
Yeah, and like Black Power, like politics and hip hop and all of that. So, and they took hip hop and Black urban culture and they made it mainstream. And, it wasn't just Black people that listened to rap. They got it into like white suburbia, basically, and they made a shit ton of money doing it. He started his own clothing line called Fat Farm. It's like PHAT, of course. He turned that into a $140 million business. He inked a deal with CBS that was worth over $500,000, but then he sold it later for $120 million.
Jesus Christ.
I know. He started television stuff. So he did like Russell Simmons' Def Comedy Jam. And that's how, this helped people like Bernie Mac, Chris Rock, Martin Lawrence. And then he also did Russell Simmons' Def Poetry Jam on HBO, which, by the way, one of my ex-boyfriends did back in the day.
No.
Because I dated a spoken word poetry
guy.
Because of course I did.
We all have those embarrassing things. Very 90s.
So 90s. He had the goatee, the whole thing. He also like started a like financial services company called UniRush that offered like prepaid debit cards. He ended up selling that for $147 million.
Oh my God.
Yes, he's rich. He turned his Rush management company into Rush Communications. He bought a pop culture website called Global Grind. They have Deaf Pictures, which does movies, you know, like your what's the one like Deaf Comedy Jam, like How to Be a Player with Bill Bellamy, like all that stuff. And he did like a book publishing called Rush Books, and he's published a bunch of books, like business books, self-help books. He did one called Do You! 12 Laws to Access the Power in You to Achieve Happiness and Success, with a foreword by Donald Trump.
Oh, Jesus.
They were friends back in the day. They are not friends anymore. Russell Simmons actually spoke out against Donald Trump when he started running for president. So they're not friends anymore. And that's a good thing. And he's also like a yoga guy. He's a vegan guy. He's a big supporter of animal rights. Just shouting that. Yeah, we like it when our creep does something good, I guess. But he's still a fucking creep. So let's get into it. This is where it gets icky. So y'all take care of yourselves. We're going to start with Sherry Hines. She was a member of a rap group called Mercedes Ladies. I just fucking love these names.
Oh,
They're
that's
so
amazing.
good. Mercedes Ladies. And she was signed by his label, and she went into his office to have what she believed was a meeting with him. And instead, he threw her down on a couch and he raped her. She was 18. So awful. A woman named Lisa Kirk said like she was dating like a friend of his. They were all at like a nightclub. She went in to use the ladies' room, and he followed her in there and attempted to rape her in a stall.
Jesus Christ.
Yes. A music journalist named Tony Sally actually went on a few dates with Simmons back in the day, and she was like, we're not a match. So she didn't want to date him anymore. A couple years later, she's invited to his apartment in Manhattan for a party. And she showed up, and he was the only one there.
Mike Tyson did that too.
Yes.
Bill Cosby's
And
daughter, yeah.
Yep. He pushed her on a bed, jumped on her, and tried to rape her, but she was actually able to get away from him. And then she said she ran into him like a year later in a hotel lobby. And again, he tried to like force her into like a ladies' restroom and assault her, but she got away from him again. We talked about this next woman in our Brett Ratner episode. So now we're at 1991, and there's this model, Carrie Kalihi. Sorry, everybody. I do my best. She was just 17, and she had met Russell Simmons and director Brett Ratner on the set of a music video. And Simmons was like, come back to my apartment. I'm going to show you like the rough cuts of the video. And like she showed up, and he immediately started like trying to take off her clothes. He tried to force her head into his lap to perform oral sex. And then he raped her while Brett Ratner watched.
Oh, Jesus.
And she actually like said to Brett Ratner, like, help me. And she said the look on his face told her in that moment that they were in it together. Like that Brett Ratner and Russell Simmons, this was their thing. It's fucked up. This guy is fucked up. Screenwriter Jenny Lumet. So she actually wrote Rachel Getting Married. She is the daughter of director Sidney Lumet. Mm-hmm. She met Russell Simmons when she appeared in the Run DMC movie Tougher Than Leather in 1988. And she's like, by the way, she said, this is a terrible movie and I was terrible in it, is what she says. But So she did that movie, and she said she would run into him from like time to time at parties, and they had mutual friends. And at some point he asked her out and she declined. She was like, no, thank you. And she said like he had like a ton of women in his life. He will describe himself as like, I'm a ladies' man. Like he likes to fuck everybody if he can. He once sent her like 250 balloons to her apartment with the note that said, please, baby, 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 which is Spike Lee.
She's got to have it.
And she was still like, no, thanks. So
Overkill.
she ran into, he's so thirsty. She ran into him at a restaurant, and it was like a party. He offered her a ride home. She made the mistake of, well, I'm going to rephrase that because she didn't make a mistake. But she got into his car, and then she told the driver her address, and Simmons was like, no, and locked the doors. And the driver took her to Simmons' apartment, and the driver and him like ushered her out of the car. She was terrified. They ushered her upstairs, and he sexually assaulted her. Jesus. She wrote all about it, and she wrote a first-person essay in The Hollywood Reporter in 2017. And I read the whole thing. It's really chilling to read. And she wrote it because this is when Me Too was happening, and a couple of other women had come out, and he was just like, I would never do that. Like, I am a, peaceful man. I would never assault a woman, blah, blah, blah. And she wrote in her essay, I don't recall ever meeting any of the women who have spoken out against you, but I can't leave those women twisting in the wind. Maybe the recalling of this incident can be helpful. I don't know if it can. Like, basically, she was like, I needed to stand up and support these women.
Right.
As they were telling their stories. So, and of course, like, he's like, he denies everything. But once she published her Hollywood Reporter article, he actually stepped down from a bunch of his businesses because it was going to hurt his business for him to be a part of them. By the way, he still made money on those businesses, but he wasn't going to run the day-to-day.
Or say he wasn't going to run the day-to-day.
Yes, exactly. So after her article comes out, a bunch of other women come forward. And one of them is Syl Abrams. And she worked as an assistant at Def Jam, and she said that this was in the early 90s. And she said her and Russell Simmons actually dated for a while in the early 90s. And then she was like, they broke up and she was done. And she, years later, she's got a new boyfriend, and she met him somewhere. They went to a party. He took her back to his apartment, and he raped her in his apartment. Another woman, Alexa Norton-Jones, she's actually a daughter of a former lawyer and a speechwriter for Martin Luther King.
Oh, Jesus.
She went on a date with Russell Simmons in the 90s, and then he invited her to see his new apartment. And when she walked in, he pinned her to a wall and raped her. This is his thing. Like, he lures people back to his apartment.
Right.
And he rapes them. And a lot of these women, by the way, are women that were just trying to do their jobs. Like,
yeah, or, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have the right to rape somebody just because they enter your home. It's not like a vampire. Like,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes. He
he
argues
your mind.
All of this was consensual. He says it's all consensual. And I'm like, the stories are the same.
Right.
Every time. It's Tina Baker. She worked as a backup singer for Madonna and Bruce Springsteen. She did like some solo recording as Tina B. She's, again, like, he lured her into her apartment to talk about her career, and then he raped her. This was the late 90s when this happened. On the Record, the documentary on HBO was very focused on Drew Dixon, who worked as a record executive at Def Jam.
Yeah.
And she did it all through the 90s. And he repeatedly, like, sexually harassed her. And she was always like, no thanks. And
Yeah, the music
also
business is especially bad. That's what I
yes,
hear.
and
Yeah.
by the way, yeah, and the documentary is amazing because it's talking about a specific kind of, it's talking about how Me Too impacted Black women in particular, and how Black women were hesitant to speak out because they know the persecution of Black men that has happened over the years, and they don't want to contribute to it. But then at a certain point, you're like, fuck these guys.
Right, right.
And you have to speak out. And so it's like, it's very, very well done. And so she is trying to do her work. She's working at Def Jam, and she's telling him no. And she's also trying to like navigate and be polite
Right.
and nice so that she can keep doing her job. And she's really good at her job. She signs all kinds of awesome people, like, you know, Mary J. Blige, Method Man and Redman, Notorious B.I.G., like works with P. Diddy, like she's working with everybody. He's harassing her all the time, trying to like get her into his apartment all the time. At one point, he exposes himself to her in his office, whips out his dick, which, who are these dudes? I don't understand. So finally, like one night she's at a like work party, and he's like, I have a demo that I think you just need to hear. You need to hear it. And of course, it's in his apartment, and she goes into his apartment and he rapes her. And she's just trying to do her job. You know, after that, she's like, I couldn't even work. She couldn't work there anymore.
No,
like,
of course not.
Every time she didn't tell anybody. And she told like some friends and family, but she didn't tell people at work. And she quit, and she got a new job at Arista, I think is how you pronounce it. Arista Records. And the president and CEO of that company is L.A. Reid. We could do a whole episode on L.A. Reid, by the way. So he kept coming on to her and harassing her as well. And when she turned him down, he refused to sign anybody that she brought. And she brought people like Kanye West and John Legend. And he was like, no, thanks.
What an asshole.
What an asshole.
Holy shit. People just want to do their jobs. She loves music.
Yes.
You know, it's like what she wants to do, and she's good at it. Just let her do her job.
Again, the documentary is so fucking upsetting, because after that, she is like, okay, I have to cut off that part of myself. And she like runs in the opposite direction. She goes to like Harvard Business School, like meets a man there, has kids, and just refuses to like do anything creative because it like hurts to do it. It's awful. It's so sad. Okay. Few more women, y'all. Bear with me. There was actress Natasha Williams Block. She was 18 when she met Russell Simmons. She was working on How to Be a Player with Bill Bellamy. I didn't see that movie.
No,
did you see that movie?
I'm not a Bill Bellamy person.
Yeah, I was like, he used to be an MTV VJ.
Yeah.
He's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
whatever.
He's handsome, but everybody thought he was hilarious. I'm like,
yeah,
he doesn't make me chuckle. But
yeah, so he invited her to his home in LA. This was 1997 for a yoga class. Again, big yogi guy. So she goes to the yoga class, and after the yoga class was over, he tried to assault her. He tried to force her head into his lap again. And she got away from him and insisted she had to go back to her dorm to do schoolwork. And
Jesus
like
Christ.
fucking ran. The Countess herself, Luann. From
De Lesseps.
Yes, from Real Housewives of New York City, said that one time she got in an elevator with Russell Simmons and he grabbed her ass. And that she said he was just a pig. She said she was horribly grossed out, and that she said, how dare you,
And
to him.
she does that a lot. But yeah, how dare he? I mean, come on.
Yes. Aaron Beatty, who worked as a massage therapist you get all my sympathy.
Yeah.
She worked as a massage therapist in Seattle. He was staying in the hotel. He ordered an in-room massage. This is 2005. And he exposed his junk to her and tried to get her to jerk him off, basically. And she was like, no thanks.
Meep,
and
meep.
Yeah, she is like the ghost outline. Meep, meep. She found the smoke outline of her. She didn't do it. And she said that he got angry. He couldn't believe that she said no. Like,
Don't you know who I am?
Don't you know who I am? It's time to touch my deaf comedy penis. Fuck this guy. Documentary filmmaker Jennifer Jarosik. She dated him for a little while and they broke up. She went to his house in 2016 to talk about a documentary she was making. He asked her for sex. She said no. And then he got angry, became physical, and assaulted her.
Jesus.
She ended up suing him for $5 million, but they settled out of court.
Good for her.
So, yes, I don't know what the settlement was because they didn't
yeah, she has to sign an NDA and all that crap.
Exactly. Yeah. Even more recently, in 2018, actress Amanda Seales, she co-stars in Insecure, said she met Russell Simmons for a business meeting in his office and that he was super gross and inappropriate to her. And he asked her if they had ever fucked. And she was like, no. Like, it's just gross shit. And I think we talked about this in one of our episodes before. Actor Terry Crews, who is on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And I think he's on is he on one of those like America's Got Talent or I don't know.
Yes, I think he is. I think he's like the Ryan Seacrest kind of person.
Yeah, he came out in 2017 during all the Me Too stuff and told a story about how an Hollywood agent like groped him.
Yeah.
And that agent, he eventually named names, and that agent like was put on leave. He lost his job, all of that. He actually got an email from Russell Simmons telling him to give the agent a pass and tell the agency to give this guy his job back. And Cruz shared, and Cruz shared, like, he took screenshots and shared it all on social media and was like, no one gets a pass. You know, and I was like, fuck you, Russell Simmons. It's not even your business.
Right.
Like, so weird. So there's all of that. And then I broke out a whole other section, which is about his family life. Mm-hmm. So Russell Simmons met Kimora Lee Simmons is what she's now known as, in November 92. So she was modeling during New York's Fashion Week. Mm-hmm. She was 16. Mm-hmm. 16 when they met. By the way, he tells everyone she was 17. Like, that fucking makes it any better.
Well, that makes it legal to him.
He's 35 at the time. Yeah. She's 16. He's 35. He's telling people she's 17. This is not the approval you think it is, sir. He also is like, her mother approved. It's still fucking
Bill
gross,
Wyman
dude.
Defense. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's another creep we'll talk about for another day.
Yes. So she's 16. He's 35. Gross. They get married 7 years later. They have 2 children. They separated in 2006, officially divorced in 2008 because he, unsurprising to anyone, is a cheater.
Yeah.
Like, he sleeps around on her. And also, he's clearly out there sexually assaulting people, allegedly. But he's not on good terms with his kids at all. Like, and he's not on good terms. They tried to keep it polite for a little while. Like, it was like, yeah, you know, we're going to still be great co-parents and blah, blah, blah. But that didn't last very long. And they are clearly not friends. Just this past Father's Day, one of his daughters, her name is Ming, went on Instagram and posted a photo of her and her mother and said, "Happy Father's Day," and tagged her mom. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he was clearly super triggered. And then he goes on Instagram. This is all like social media war at this point. he goes on social media and says, stop telling fathers they should have fought harder to see their children and start asking mothers why they had to fight it all. That's his big thing.
Oh, fuck
And
off.
I know, seriously. And then Kimura was like, you know what? Fuck you. And she went on Instagram Live and just was like, we've had enough of your bullshit. Like, we've been tolerating your abuse for years. And she's like, I have receipts. I like receipts. I've been collecting them. I've been baking a cake. And if you want it, let me know, is what she said to him.
I'm sure he's been gaslighting her. And when you're getting
Yes.
gaslit, you start to collect receipts because they love to tell you how crazy you are, or you overreact,
Yes.
or you're emotional, or blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Yeah.
She is not having it.
Right.
So she also said in that Instagram, she's like, I am the primary caretaker of this family, and that he's cut his children off financially. Their other daughter, I want to say it's Aiko, also chimed in on social media, and she had the receipts too. She shared a recording of Russell Simmons yelling at her on a FaceTime video. And she said, this is all he does every time we speak. And she said that he threatens and has threatened and bullied her sister, that he has threatened and harassed their grandmother, who's like not in very good health. She said he sent a man to his sister's apartment at 2 a.m. to scare her.
What the fuck?
And I know. And she said he lashes out at anyone who does not say, oh, Russell, everything is fine, which is clearly feels very accurate, let me say. Like, all of these women that all these stories are shared are women. They all told him no. And he does not take no for an answer.
Right. He's entitled.
He's a fucking creep.
He doesn't live in the U.S., right? He lives overseas.
So he's been flying back and forth between the U.S. and Indonesia.
Right.
Indonesia does not have extradition laws to the U.S. So he flies in for like rando things, and then he immediately flies out. I have read that the police have open cases, but they have not pressed any charges
Yet.
So it could still happen.
Right.
I hope it does.
Yeah.
I hope they hold this guy accountable. And that's our fucking creep.
Good
Russell
job,
Simmons.
Sonia. Oh my God, what an asshole.
He's such an asshole.
I told you off the air, I worked at Child Magazine like 20 years ago. Oh my God, it was so long ago. But we used to do a fashion show during Fashion Week, and Kimura Lee Simmons was like one of our designers. And he would always say he'd show up. It was like for a couple of years I was there. He'd say he'd show up, and then he never showed up. But like he just had no interest. It wasn't surprising when they got divorced. It was like, oh, she's beautiful, by the way. She's stunning.
Yes, her daughters are also like
Gorgeous,
beautiful, and it doesn't appear that Russell Simmons is very canceled for this kind of action too. Like, you know, people talk about cancel culture. Like, he still makes money off his various businesses.
Right.
You know, he recently, I think the most recent thing I saw was he did a bunch of like hip hop NFTs, which, you know, I don't even really know what that means, but like Snoop Dogg was involved, and, you know, he still like gets big names to do his dirty work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the music business.
Seriously, so gross.
All right. Well, do you want to hear about some nonprofits that are not gross?
Please.
So these are just a list of hip hop nonprofits that are out there, just so you don't feel like we said, like the world is a total trash fire. There's the Center for Hip-Hop Advocacy, and they have a podcast called Hip-Hop Can Save America. And it's a source of independent journalism, curating and creating articles, editorials, and multimedia places that help tell hip-hop's complete story. They conduct original primary research, measuring hip-hop's impact on the arts, culture, community, education, politics, activism, philosophy, and more.
Ooh, I love this.
Right? There's Hip Hop for Change. They break down the barriers between youth and justice issues that affect their lives, communities, and hip hop as a vehicle. Through this work, they educate, employ, empower historically marginalized communities and inspire the next generation of leaders advocating for change. Their whole thing is they are reclaiming hip hop culture as a vehicle for education, empowerment, and cultural innovation. And they're out of the Bay Area, which is where Sonia lives.
Mm-hmm.
There is the Ladies of Hip Hop, which is a nonprofit organization that provides artistic opportunities for girls and women in hip hop culture.
Nice.
Yes. Through female-powered workshops, performances, public talks, and professional development training. So they're helping educate the next hip hop leaders. And then our girl Rihanna, she has a global scholarship program, which is to help grant funding to international students enrolling in a U.S. university through the Clara Lionel Foundation. And it's named in honor of her grandparents, Clara and Lionel Braithwaite. And,
That's awesome.
And those are just a few of the hip hop nonprofits I wanted to highlight. Of course, they'll all be in our show notes, so you can check them out for yourselves and support them. I think that's amazing, and I think it's a nice way to end this show today.
Yes. Great picks.
Thank you. Well, that's our show today. And if you like the sound of our voices, we also co-host a show called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies. Our last movie was Big Business with Lily Tomlin and Bette Midler, which we thoroughly enjoyed.
And Lily Tomlin and Bette Midler.
And Fred Ward, who's hilarious.
Yes.
And our next movie, Sonia, what's that going to be?
Close Encounters of the Third Kind. We've decided to do a big summer blockbuster.
Right in the middle of summer. It's the perfect time to do these kinds of movies. I watched it the other night. I'm going to watch it again. It's so beautiful. It totally holds up. I have some thoughts about the Richard Dreyfuss character, but we'll talk about that when we talk about that episode. And we also offer our pop culture recs, what you want to stream and watch and listen to. We do that for you. So that's the end of every show for that show. And please reach out to us wherever, all those places I mentioned at the top of the show. If you have any ideas for creeps and for non-creeps, we love it when you use the Antipods gift. We got one from Ghostbusters, but use anything you want. Use your imagination. Y'all are clever. Our email, once again, is whatacreeppodcast, spell that all out, @gmail.com. We do have stickers if y'all want some stickers. Mm-hmm. And Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter and Instagram and the TikTok, where I'm there to ruin it for the kids. Where can people find you, Margot?
You can find me on Twitter at Brooklyn Margot. On Instagram, I'm at Brooklyn Fitchick. My site is Brooklyn Fitchick, and I am on TikTok at Margot Donahue. And I post lots of clips there.
Yeah, you do.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Be safe. Be kind. Just don't be a creep.
Be a creep. Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.